night rain was relentless, turning the city's narrow alleys into streams of reflected red and blue, sirens howling through the blur. A battered army backpack hit the pavement, contents spilling, an old medal, dog tags, a stained field diary. The metal spun, catching the yellow pulse of police lights, then clattered to a stop in a shallow puddle. Jenna Murphy's hands trembled as she snatched the bag back, her knuckles white with fear and adrenaline. A police officer's flashlight swept across her face. "Ma'am, you need to step back. This is a crime scene." Jenna's eyes flashed, not with panic, but a desperate, silent question. Somewhere in the rain, a memory rose, Will's voice urgent in her mind. "If you ever learn the truth, don't let it be too late." She turned, but he was gone. Only the echo remained, tangled with rain and distant sirens. What would you do if a single act of kindness turned into a lifeline for someone you never truly knew? Comment below before the story unfolds, because sometimes the most important answers come when you least expect them. Would you walk away, or risk everything to find out the truth? In the early gray of each morning, before the city woke, Jenna Murphy unlocked the front door of Harbor Light Diner, a modest place clinging to the edge of Portland's industrial district, where the river fog was thickest and stories clung to the walls like old grease. Inside, the air was heavy with yesterday's coffee and the faint memory of cinnamon. Jenna moved with practiced silence, flipping on the lights, dragging her battered boots across the linoleum floor. She was in her late 30s. Her dark hair shot through with strands of silver, her eyes sharp, tired, but always searching. Jenna wasn't born to smallness, but life, war, and the slow grind of peacetime had a way of shrinking the proudest hearts. She'd once been an army nurse, deployed to Afghanistan at 24, the kind who ran toward the shouting, the blood, the chaos. It was in Kandahar, one endless, hellish night. Thunder pounding distant mountains, mortar fire rattling the walls, where she performed her first desperate field surgery. The patient, a young combat medic named Will Parker, had come in with half his side torn open by shrapnel. He was barely conscious, his blood soaking through her hands as she worked under a flickering tent lamp, improvising with what little morphine and thread she had left. His eyes, glazed but stubborn, locked on hers as she pressed a gauze to his chest. "Don't let me go," he rasped. She didn't. But the medevac took him away before dawn, and Jenna never saw him again. She didn't know if Will had survived, if her frantic hands had been enough. She carried the question home, packed it alongside her medals and scars. For years, it waited, silent and unsolved. Harbor Light Diner wasn't the place she dreamed of owning, but it became the one she needed. She bought it with a disability payout and grit, built a routine that saved her from drifting. Each dawn, Jenna prepared a hot breakfast and a black coffee, wrapping them tight in brown paper, scribbling the day's date on the napkin. She slipped out the back door before sunrise, placing the bundle on the old brick stoop just behind the dumpster. "For anyone who needs it," she'd murmur, as if invoking a ritual. Sometimes the bundle disappeared in minutes. Sometimes it lingered until the first light. Jenna never watched, never asked, never wanted to invade the dignity of whoever came. She didn't care if it was a nameless vet, a runaway, or a city worker on hard times. She believed fiercely that hunger had no face, no label. The neighborhood changed. Factories closed. Warehouses turned to condos, but Harbor Light held on. Barely. Some called her lieutenant with a wink, others simply nodded over chipped mugs. But each month, the balance sheet bled a little more. Jenna's friends, nurses, cops, even her old VA counselor, warned her she was burning out, helping ghosts, risking her own future. Still, she persisted, driven by something deeper than profit. The duty didn't end at the front lines, she thought. Sometimes it began with a hot meal, a safe place, and no questions. Sometimes, late at night, Jenna's mind drifted back to that tent in Kandahar. She would hear mortar thuds and the clatter of falling pans, see Will's gray eyes and the battered faces at her counter. No matter how many faces passed through her door, one question haunted her. Had she really done enough? As dawn broke over Portland, and Jenna placed one more breakfast on the stoop, a new day began. One more chance for a question to be answered, or for hope to find a hungry soul. The city never truly slept, but for Jenna, it was the hours just before dawn when the world felt rawest, when every creak in the diner's walls sounded like a memory clawing to get out. The Harbor Light Diner had always been a patchwork of second chances, but lately, it seemed stitched together by ever thinner thread. One overcast Tuesday, Jenna stood by the counter counting the last of the week's cash receipts, her thumb tracing the faded logo on a coffee cup. Across the room, a new city official, his suit too sharp for the neighborhood, stood at the window, clipboard in hand. He cleared his throat. "Ms. Murphy, there have been complaints. Feeding vagrants isn't permitted under the new municipal code. I'm afraid if you keep leaving food out back, you'll be facing fines. This is your official warning." His voice was smooth, rehearsed, and utterly without warmth. Jenna's jaw tightened. She nodded, eyes never leaving his. "Understood," she replied, her voice low, measured. But inside, a storm was gathering. What did it mean to do the right thing if the world called it wrong? Word spread fast. Her staff exchanged anxious glances. Regulars gossiped in worried tones. Even Rick, her retired Marine dishwasher, hesitated one morning. "You can't save everyone, Jenna," he said, polishing a chipped mug. "Not everyone wants to be saved." She wanted to argue, but her hands just found another plate to scrub. Another waitress shook her head as she refilled the sugar. "You're helping the wrong people, Jenna. Some of them just use you." The accusation lingered long after she left for home. Still, she persisted. The next morning, she left the breakfast bundle anyway. Quieter, more careful now, her heart pounding as she scanned the alley. But doubt, once planted, grew fast. A week later, Jenna saw something that shook her. In the city park, a gaunt man handed her brown-wrapped sandwich to a second man in exchange for a crumpled $5 bill. For a moment, all her convictions splintered. Was she being naive? Was her help only fueling a different kind of hunger? That night, she nearly skipped the ritual. Standing by the kitchen window, she watched the rain beat down, neon signs flickering through the gloom. On the counter, the breakfast bundle sat untouched. Her fingers hovered above it, then retreated. Rick found her, staring at the box. "Looks like the world's getting meaner," he said. She managed a bitter laugh. "Or maybe I'm just getting softer," she whispered. Still, old instincts warred with exhaustion. The next morning, she placed the food on the stoop, almost in defiance. It was a slow week. Jenna wondered if anyone even came for the food anymore. Her regulars were quieter. The official warning seemed to have sucked the life out of the place. One night, she overheard old veterans in the alley trading stories about the angel of Harbor Light and how a nameless kindness had kept them alive. Jenna pressed herself against the cold brick, listening. She felt her chest ache, somewhere between pride and heartbreak. That same night, she found a small object tucked under the empty breakfast box, A rusted dog tag, its chain looped tight, engraved in uneven letters. "Thank you for Kandahar." Jenna's breath caught. Her hand closed over the metal, thumb tracing the scarred letters. The past she tried to leave behind was never far. It lingered in every act of kindness, every shadow that crossed her threshold. But the world pushed back. On Friday, the city official returned, citation in hand. "I told you, Ms. Murphy. Next time it'll be worse." She signed the ticket in silence. That night, Jenna left the kitchen door unlocked, just in case someone needed warmth more than a meal. She made herself tea and tried to read, but her mind drifted. Rain pounded the window. Her phone buzzed. No one important. She closed her eyes, fatigue clawing at her bones. Sometime past midnight, Jenna heard movement, a shuffle, a scrape near the back door. She tensed, heart thrumming. But when she peered into the alley, she saw nothing but darkness. The breakfast box gone. She slumped against the door frame, the cold seeping into her skin. She nearly gave up. But the next day, a small paper crane, folded from a napkin, sat on the stoop. Scrawled inside, "You never know who you save. Don't stop." Her throat closed. Tears burned, unbidden. She pressed the paper crane to her chest, the faint smell of kitchen grease and old sugar mingling with the sharpness of hope. Jenna went back inside, resolve quietly rekindled. No one saw the tremor in her hands, or the way her jaw set as she prepared the next breakfast. But that morning, the coffee tasted stronger, the sunrise seemed brighter, and the Harbor Light Diner, battered but unbroken, kept its ritual alive for one more day. Night fell heavier than usual, blanketing the city in an uneasy hush. There was something different about the air, a tension Jenna couldn't name, vibrating beneath the old neon sign out front. Rain pelted the windows in cold sheets, pooling in the gutters, blurring the streetlights to halos. The Harbor Light Diner was almost empty. Just Rick wiping down the counter and a couple of regulars lingering over watery coffee. Jenna counted the register, fingers slow, mind elsewhere. A crash shattered the silence, the sharp crack of glass at the back. For a second, no one moved. Then Jenna was running, the smell of wet asphalt and fear thick in her lungs. She burst through the swinging kitchen door to find two men, faces shadowed by hoodies, rifling through the tip jar and register. One man, a big one, his shoulders hunched in the dim light, lunged for the open back door. The other grabbed at something on the prep table. Jenna's battered army backpack, always kept in the same spot. "Leave it!" Jenna shouted, her voice sharper than she felt. The men froze, uncertain. Then, from behind the stacked crates, a third figure stumbled forward, thin, shivering, wrapped in a threadbare coat. He tried to put himself between Jenna and the thieves, voice raw. "Don't hurt her. Take the money and go." Jenna's eyes caught the stranger's, pale blue, hollowed by years, but burning with a stubbornness she'd seen once before. On a cot in Kandahar, years and worlds away. It was Will. But before she could say a word, the big man shoved the shivering stranger aside and swung at Jenna. Pain exploded in her temple. She went down hard, the world spinning. She heard Rick yell, heard the register crash to the floor, heard the men scramble out into the night. Then, darkness. When Jenna awoke, the first thing she noticed was the sterile smell of antiseptic and the soft hum of hospital machines. She blinked against the sharp light, trying to remember how she'd gotten here. Her head throbbed, bandaged tight, and her arms ached as if they'd been used to break her fall. A nurse glanced up from a chart. "You're lucky, Ms. Murphy. Concussion, a few bruises, but nothing broken. Jenna tried to sit up, but the room tilted. She pressed her palm to her forehead. "Was anyone else hurt?" she rasped. The nurse shook her head. "Your friend, the man who tried to help, he disappeared before the ambulance came. Left this for you." She placed a battered army backpack on the table. Jenna reached for it with shaking hands. The zipper was stiff, old, but it opened with a familiar sound, a memory unlocked. Inside, her nurse's medal, lost so long ago in the chaos of Afghanistan, the ribbon faded, but the engraving sharp. Service and Sacrifice, J. Murphy. A dog-eared field diary, the pages soft, full of smudged pencil notes. A faded photograph. Will, younger but unmistakable, grinning beside a dusty ambulance, scrawled across the back, "For Jenna, the reason I made it home." Her hands trembled. Was this closure, or just the weight of an old debt? For years, she'd wondered if any of it had mattered, if a single act could ever redeem all the wounds of war. For a heartbeat, she almost felt Will's hand in hers again. Warm, pleading, trusting her to do the impossible one more time. Tears threatened, but Jenna pressed her lips together. She flipped open the diary, searching for answers, for something that would make sense of the pain and years. The door opened, and a young woman entered. Maybe 18, hair tied back with a worn ribbon, face anxious but determined. Behind her came two men in civilian clothes, their posture military even out of uniform. The girl hesitated. "I'm Anna, Will Parker's daughter." She held Jenna's gaze, searching for understanding. "My dad, he always talked about you. He said you saved his life once in Kandahar. He tried to find you for years, but he never wanted to intrude. Anna's voice broke. One of the men, Will's former squadmates, put a hand on her shoulder. "He was living rough," the man said quietly. "He'd been struggling. PTSD, the usual runaround from the VA. But every year he brought Anna here just to watch you from a distance. He didn't want you to see what he'd become. He was proud. Maybe too proud." Jenna felt her heart crumple. She looked at the photo again, thumb brushing the edge. "Why didn't he ever come in?" Anna shook her head. "He said you already did enough. He was scared you'd see what the war made of him. But you gave him hope, Jenna. Every morning he saw that breakfast, that coffee. He called you the angel of harbor light." A silence thickened in the hospital room. Then the second squadmate spoke, voice hoarse. "Will, he died saving someone else last night. A young guy OD'd in the alley behind your diner. Will gave him CPR until help arrived. But he was too weak. Heart gave out." Jenna stared at them, the words slow to land. "He died. Saving someone?" Anna nodded, eyes shining. "His last wish was to bring you back your medal. He said, 'You saved my life. I wanted to save yours too.'" Jenna's voice broke. "I never stopped questioning if I did the right thing. If maybe somehow I made it worse." Anna squeezed her hand, steady. "You brought hope, not harm. He told me you gave him a reason to hold on." Jenna's breath shuddered out. She pressed the medal to her chest, feeling the weight, the years, the truth. The squadmates stayed a while, sharing coffee, old stories of the field, the tiny victories and defeats that never made the news. Anna sat quietly, sometimes laughing, sometimes wiping her eyes. Jenna turned the dog tag over and over in her hand, reading and rereading the battered letters. "Thank you for Kandahar." When the room grew quiet, Anna finally said, "You weren't just his angel. You're ours now. Thank you for being the reason he kept going." Jenna nodded. silent tears rolling down her cheeks. The sun was rising outside, pale gold filtering through the blinds, washing the hospital walls in new light. For the first time in years, Jenna felt the heavy knot of guilt and doubt loosen, replaced by something bittersweet, fierce, and bright. She closed her eyes, let herself remember. Will's voice in the tent, the press of his hand, the desperate promise not to let go. Now, years later, that promise had circled back. A life saved, a life lost, and a circle of kindness bigger than either of them could ever see. The morning after Jenna left the hospital, the air outside the diner was crisp and clean, the storm having scrubbed the city bright. She stood in the doorway, the familiar ache in her ribs less sharp than before, the world seeming softer somehow. In her pocket, Will's dog tag felt cool and grounding, like a promise she'd finally kept. Inside, Harbor Light Diner buzzed with a rare sense of anticipation. Rick had started the coffee early, and regulars filed in, drawn by something unspoken. The news had spread. Jenna was back, and something had changed. As she crossed the threshold, Jenna noticed a small crowd gathered near the old corner booth. There, beside the faded photo of the diner's original owner, was a makeshift shrine. A battered field jacket draped over the chair. Will's photo propped beside a flickering candle. A handful of old coins, campaign ribbons, even a folded napkin shaped like a crane. At the heart of it all was her nurse's medal, newly polished, the ribbon looped around the base of a chipped coffee mug. Jenna felt a hand on her arm. It was Carl, one of her oldest regulars, Vietnam vet, voice as gravelly as the road outside. Heard what happened? Will, well, he saved my hide more than once too. Never told you, did he? He had a way of showing up when you needed him most. Carl pressed something into Jenna's palm, a worn patch from his old unit. We all do what we can. You did more than most. One by one, others shared their stories. A mother, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness, said Will once found her son sleeping under a bridge and walked him to a shelter, never asking for thanks. A young waitress remembered the night Jenna called her father, drunk and angry, and waited with her until dawn, not saying a word, just holding her hand. A retired fireman spoke of the coffee Jenna poured for him the night after his wife died, the way she slipped a cinnamon roll into his pocket when she thought he wasn't looking. Sarah, who Jenna once found shivering on the stoop, now returned each Saturday to serve coffee. You saved me, she said simply. I want to pass it on, stories spread, each one a quiet spark, of kindness given, pain eased, burdens shared. The shrine grew, people adding small tokens, dog tags, faded notes, a child's drawing of a soldier and a nurse holding hands under the Harbor Light sign. Rick stood behind the counter, clearing his throat. You know, maybe it's time for something new. Every day someone pays it forward. A breakfast, a coffee, a smile. Let's make it official. Silent breakfasts. Anyone who needs it, no questions. And anyone who can, pays it forward, simple. Jenna felt her voice catch. She nodded, the words thick but sure. It was never just about the food, she said softly. It's about being seen, knowing you matter. The tradition caught on quickly. Veterans groups donated supplies. First responders swung by after night shifts to drop off extra sandwiches. Locals left envelopes with small bills or handwritten notes for the next hungry soul. Each morning, Jenna added a new item to the shrine. Sometimes a patch, sometimes a photo, sometimes just a fresh cup of black coffee. She began to notice people looking out for each other, regulars buying an extra meal, strangers paying for someone's tab without a word. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the window, a new face appeared at the counter. She was young, tired-looking, with a shy smile. Jenna slid a plate of eggs across, saw the nervous glance, the empty wallet, the gratitude hidden in a mumbled, "Thank you." Before the girl could leave, an elderly woman touched her sleeve, pressing a folded 20 into her palm. "Pay it forward, honey," she whispered. "That's how this place works." Jenna watched, heart swelling as the ritual repeated. Over and over, a chain of small mercies stretching out beyond her little diner, weaving a safety net from the most ordinary kindnesses. Late that evening, when the diner was quiet, Jenna stood by the shrine, Will's dog tag cool in her hand, her eyes on the doorway where so many had come and gone. She felt the presence of all those she'd helped, and all those she'd lost. None of them forgotten. Not anymore. The diner's old neon buzzed overhead, the smell of coffee thick and dark, mingling with the sweetness of cinnamon and hope. Outside, the city was quieter than usual, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the sun to rise on another day of second chances. The days grew longer, the river fog burning off under the warmth of a gentler spring. Harbor Light Diner thrived in its modest way, the paint still peeling, the booths still wobbly, but now alive with something Jenna couldn't name, a quiet resilience that felt like grace. Each morning, she unlocked the door to find new faces and old souls, the air rich with stories and the clatter of hope. One Thursday, Jenna arrived early to prep dough and fill the urns. On the threshold, she paused. There, on the cold step, sat a small package wrapped in brown paper. The handwriting on the attached note was careful but unsure. "You saved my father. Now it's our turn." Inside was a simple breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast, a cup of black coffee, mirroring the very meals Jenna had offered for years. Jenna's breath caught in her chest, a tremor of humility running through her. She pressed the note to her lips, then tucked it behind Will's photograph at the shrine. That morning, she poured coffee for a table of construction workers swapping stories, topped off the cup of a nurse just off shift, shared a smile with Anna, Will's daughter, now a regular, sometimes volunteering behind the counter, sometimes just sitting, lost in thought and memory. Old friends and new sat side by side, strangers sharing laughter over burnt toast and cheap mugs, the boundary between helper and helped, blurring into the same everyday kindness. Jenna moved through her day with a lighter step. She noticed things she hadn't seen in years: the light slanting through the greasy window, the way the floor creaked under Rick's steady walk, the hush that fell when a veterans group took the big corner table, hands calloused and stories soft-spoken. One morning, an envelope appeared, addressed in unfamiliar print. "To the next angel." Inside, a photograph. Will as a boy, beaming in a Little League uniform, next to a note. "None of us stand alone. You proved that. Thank you, from one forgotten soul to another." Jenna started keeping a journal at the counter, a battered notebook where anyone could scribble a memory, a thank you, or a name of someone gone but not lost. It filled quickly. Some wrote of war, some of hunger, some of coming home to nothing. Others wrote of being seen for the first time, of the power in a simple meal and a quiet place to rest. The silent breakfasts tradition flourished. Local businesses chipped in. Neighborhood kids left handmade cards for veterans. Even the city official, who once threatened fines, stopped by one day with a box of pastries and a gruff apology. One afternoon, Anna caught Jenna wiping down the shrine. "My dad, he'd be proud. Not just of you, but of this, of what you started." He used to say the only thing stronger than a soldier's courage is a stranger's kindness. Jenna smiled softly. I'm not sure I ever understood what that meant, until now. As weeks passed, the diner's energy grew lighter, sorrow and joy mingling in equal measure. Jenna's friends remarked on the change. Her eyes clearer, her laughter easier, the heaviness in her step mostly gone. Some wounds never truly heal, she thought. But sometimes, the ache makes room for something new. Jenna paused often at the window, watching as the city woke up, sunlight breaking through mist and memory. She saw faces she'd once dismissed as passing strangers, now each one a thread in the tapestry she'd unwittingly woven. She realized, finally, that the duty she'd carried out of Afghanistan didn't end with the war. It lived on, reshaped by ordinary mornings and small gestures, by every soul who walked through her door in search of comfort, or simply to be remembered. On the wall above the shrine, a new plaque appeared, etched by an anonymous donor. In honor of the Harbor Light Angels, those who serve, those who remember, and those who keep the light burning. As the script's perspective widens, we see not just Jenna, but a chain of people connected by invisible acts. A police officer slipping a free meal voucher to a homeless vet. A nurse buying groceries for a neighbor just out of the hospital. Anna teaching local teens how to make pancakes and listen, really listen, to the stories people carried. Unsung heroes walk among us. Their gifts aren't always medals or parades. Sometimes they're a single cup of coffee left in the quiet. And the stories we tell, about war, about peace, about the long road home, are less about endings and more about beginnings. The smallest act of care, the simplest meal, can echo far beyond what we see, weaving hope into places where it was almost lost. Late one evening, as Jenna closed the diner, she looked out at the empty street, the windows glowing gold, the world silent but alive with possibility. She held Will's dog tag in her hand and whispered, "Thank you for showing me I was never alone." As she turned off the last light, Jenna placed a fresh cup of coffee by the window, the steam curling in the dark, a signal to any lost soul that here, in this battered little diner, someone still believed they mattered. If someone ever changed your life with a simple kindness, share your story below and subscribe to This Really Happened. Because every day, ordinary people save each other in ways the world never sees, and sometimes, that's the greatest heroism of all. The door swung open to golden morning light. On the counter, the unopened letter, to the next angel. The story goes on. The camera lingers on the empty diner as morning breaks, a golden beam slipping through the window, glinting off mismatched mugs and the shrine in the corner. Outside, the city begins to stir. The low growl of trucks, distant church bells, a child's laughter echoing off brick walls. For a moment, everything holds still, bathed in that rare, hopeful hush before the day's weight settles in. Inside, Jenna unlocks the door, breathes in the mingled scents of coffee and fresh rain, and straightens the silent breakfasts sign. The notebook at the counter is open to a new page, waiting. Someone has left another small offering by the shrine, a bronze coin from Iraq, a pair of dog tags, a folded American flag patch, the quiet language of gratitude and memory. Rick enters with a box of pastries, nodding to Jenna as if no words are needed. Anna arrives moments later, her cheeks flushed with the promise of a new day, already rolling up her sleeves to help with the rush. Together they move through the morning like musicians in a familiar song, laughter and the clang of pans rising, falling, rising again. By mid-morning, the diner is full, a patchwork of uniforms and street clothes, old veterans, young mothers, kids with school books, all drawn together by the strange gravity of kindness. A regular, a gruff firefighter with burn scars on his arms, pays for a stranger's meal, nods to Jenna. The girl from earlier leaves a thank you note. For when I can, I'll pay it forward too. Jenna reads each new entry in the notebook quietly. Thank you for the ride to the shelter. You listened when no one else did. This meal saved me. Each story is different. Each is the same. As the lunch crowd thins, Jenna steps out back. She looks at the spot where she used to leave that first lonely breakfast, the brick stoop washed clean by years and rain. For a moment, she closes her eyes, feeling the pulse of memory, the lives she touched, and those who reached back. She understands now. Kindness isn't lost. It multiplies. The meals, the medals, the memories, each one a thread in a much bigger tapestry, woven by countless hands and hearts. This was never just my story, Jenna thinks. It's all of ours. The harbor light was only the beginning. The real work is out there, waiting. One cup of coffee, one quiet act at a time. As the sun crests the rooftops, Jenna props open the door, welcoming the day. The camera pulls back, past the busy tables, past the shrine, past the notebook overflowing with gratitude, and finally out into the street, where faces pass unseen, each carrying battles, hopes, and chances to be the next angel in someone else's story.